Hello, everyone. Welcome to part 2 of the Curious Leadership Foundations course. And last time we left off right around here, actually not right around, exactly here. This was the last slide, the Principles of Appreciative Inquiry. There are 5 of them. And I think last time we were about 45 minutes long of an instructional video. This one might go a little quicker. We shall see. But I think it won't take as long because they're pretty much self-explanatory. They're straightforward. There's not a whole lot for me to unpack on them. So let's just get right to it. And she's trying to advance the slide deck. There we go. Now, before we actually begin, I have 2 little stories that I would like to share with you. First one on the left, the picture to go along with it, it's the story of the stonecutters. Sometimes it's called the bricklayer story. Sometimes it's told as a parable. There may be a religious overtone. So what I did was I secularized it to make it accessible to all. I don't want to alienate anybody based upon any religious values or anything like that. So here's the story. And there are 3 people who are stonecutters, and that's what they do for a living. They cut stone in order to build archways and things like that, just like you see right there. There's a keystone usually in the middle so an arch doesn't fall down. These are beautiful Gothic arches. So just picture this. I live in a town that has this beautiful performing arts center, and they have these neoclassical or neo-Gothic arches and everything. So imagine that there's 3 stonecutters all working together on this cultural arts center. Someone comes along and starts to ask them, like, hey, what are you doing here? And so the first stonecutter said, well, I'm a stonecutter. I cut stone. I need to make money to feed my family and support them. And, that's what I'm doing. And that's why I'm doing it. And so they say, oh, okay, well, thank you for sharing. And then there's the second stonecutter. And they said, well, what are you doing? And they said, well, I'm cutting stone. And the reason why I'm doing it is, I've got to build this arch and I have to cut the stones a certain way to support this structure. And, I'm a stonecutter. That's what I do and why I'm doing it. Third stonecutter, when asked, what are they doing? That stonecutter says, well, I've got to cut these stones because I am part of this project where we are going to create a space for the community to come together and celebrate art and culture and music and dance. And this is my way of contributing to our project, right? So you can see the person who was listening to each story, they were all doing the same thing, but their reasons why, were very, very different. And, each one kind of elevated the purpose a little bit. Here's where the story gets really interesting. Those first 2 stonecutters, when they heard the third person say, I am not just a stonecutter in order to make money. That's my job. I'm not just a stonecutter who has a certain skill in order to make something happen. When the first 2 heard the purpose of how this is how they contribute to elevate their community, they all of a sudden said, you know what? We're going to change our answer. We are also contributing to our neighborhood and our community. And then they were co-creating their unified purpose. And so that is part of what we're going to be learning throughout the rest of this time together. This instruction is, now that you have certain knowledge, how are you empowered to use that? And how are you going to share each other's takeaways? So that way, it's not just what you're learning. You can learn from everyone else. And everyone can help elevate their reason for being, their purpose. That's the first story. Second story, you might have heard it before, and it's called Stone Soup. Right there's the picture. And it's a children's story. I actually, back when I was in junior high, back then it wasn't called middle school, we had junior high, I actually was involved in a recording project where a bunch of us, I think I was in 7th grade at the time, we all came together in a recording studio with our show choir director, and we actually made a children's recording, a children's album about this story. So it's kind of near and dear to my heart. And I always thought it was just this silly story about making soup from a stone. And the way it goes is, there's someone and they have a stone, and the community doesn't really have a whole lot of money and things like that. And so, the practice of taking rocks and boiling it in water, those minerals will leach out into the water and you can drink it. And, this is true. And then you get your vitamins and your minerals. In fact, there's even in certain countries where there's anemia, they created these iron fish that you can put in water and drink the water, and then you get your iron. So, there's truth to all of this. So anyway, this one woman, she's boiling her stones. Someone walks by and says, well, what are you doing? She's like, I'm making stone soup. And they're like, soup from a stone? Like, how can you do that? Oh, well, I'm putting my stuff in here. And so the person says, you know what? I have an idea. I'll be right back. So the person runs home, brings some onions. And they said, would you mind if I contributed and I'd like to just give you this onion? I think it would be kind of cool to have onion in your stone soup. Oh, that would be great. Thanks. Why don't you come back later on this evening for dinner when it's ready, and you can share some with me. Another person comes by. What are you doing? I'm making stone soup. And they say, you know what? That smells really good with that onion in there, but it needs some color. I've got some carrots. Can I go home and give you some carrots? These people are just out of the kindness of their heart, contributing to this. They're curious about, well, what are you doing? Oh, how do you make stone from a soup? And they just wanted to contribute. So the story goes on and on. Some people have some salt and some pepper, some butters, some leftover meat. And so all these people come together, contribute, and then at the end, they all eat this stone soup. And so it's kind of whimsical, it's kind of magical. How do you get soup from a stone? And you could say, well, she's actually being very clever, getting all these people to contribute to her soup. But really, when you think about it, when people are open and willing to share and talking about their vision, I am going to make soup, I can see it, there's going to be soup, you share it, and everyone wants to be a part of it. It is human nature to come together and co-create and self-organize and to trust the wisdom of the group that they will self-organize. That is really, once I learned about appreciative inquiry, that story with the stone soup, I looked at it through a completely different lens. And, remember that when people come together and they share their purpose and are curious about what is this going to look like in the future when it's finished, then you can get this buy-in. And you as a leader aren't telling people what that is. You're just bringing them together, asking the questions. Granted, it's centered around the direction you want them to go in. However, when you craft these questions, you'll see the magic. So there are 5 principles within A.I. And I invite you to write these down. First one, Constructionist Principle. Very famous phrase, words create worlds. You can construct the world you want to live in depending upon the words you use. If they are negative words, you wake up in the morning, oh, it's Monday, I don't want to go to work. If you make that your first statement that you are putting into your brain, how do you think the rest of the day is going to go? Or you could say, It's Monday. I have a whole nother opportunity here with my students, with my colleagues. I am so thankful I have a job. I'm going to drive in and I'm going to make this the best day possible. When you use your words, it is so, so important. How many times have you had a conversation with maybe parents and you're discussing behavior of the student or performance of the student? You really need to be mindful, right? Or you craft that email, because once you send it, they can unpack it however they want. Use your words very carefully. That's the first one. Poetic principle. What we focus on expands, and it's changeable. So in meaning that is, again, words, this is very similar, but the next day, you still have the same job. You still have the same house. You still have your same body. One day, you can wake up and have a negative feeling. The next day could be totally different. You can change it. And that's inspiring, because you can take something that has been in a deficit, negative lens. And if you just change that lens, you can change an entire trajectory. Sometimes we've even had to say, if a classroom is kind of going in a direction you didn't want, or a conversation, you can say, wait a minute, can we try again? Can we make a do-over? And once you do that and create that little space, you can see how things can totally shift. Or I might say, I'm so sorry that that's how you interpreted that. That was not my intention. My intention was this, and I apologize if the impact was a different way. So realizing that how you view the world can really change your perspective is extremely important to keep that in mind. It's not fixed. It can change. The positive principle, and I really like that photo, I gotta say, it will inspire positive collective change. So what you focus on expands. So if you focus on the positive, that will expand. The other thing too about the positive principle is to think again about nature. We are human beings. We are alive. And if you think of most living things, what do? They grow to the light. They need nourishment. They need life-sustaining, life-supporting energy. And we're the same way, and organizations are the same way. If you focus on the positive, you can organize people to come together. Now, some people would say, well, a lot of people can unite over something negative, and that's how you have revolutions, and that's how you overthrow like a government, or the civil rights movement. Absolutely, that's true. However, to inspire why they even want that, it's because you rally people and they really believe that there's something better for them. Martin Luther King was talking about his dream of what he wants, as opposed to focusing and analyzing the negativity. Doesn't negate that it doesn't exist. You have to acknowledge that. But acknowledging that this is where we are. However, this is where we want to be. That part is what is going to inspire people to change. Simultaneity principle. This is kind of cool. I want to say it's kind of rooted in physics in a way, but as soon as you ask a question, that's when change begins. It's the catalyst, right? That's the scientific word. It's a catalyst. There's momentum there. There's inertia. A question can set things in motion, and an object in motion will stay in motion unless acted by an opposite whatever force, right? So realizing that that question ignites the spark, and it all starts with that, keep that in mind. We tend to really like affirming statements because it's rooted in whatever truth we think it is. And as we know now, truth is subjective because whatever you focus on is reality. and you can choose what you focus on, and then it becomes a different reality. So if we start to think about more reality as a series of questions that will reveal the truth, then we realize that we've got entirely different possibilities. And then the last one, the anticipatory principle. Imagining the future creates a shift in the present. And I kind of said that before, like these 5 principles, they're, they bleed through. It's not compartmentalized. And again, these are theories that over time we realize are truths. But, it's not empirical one way versus the other. We can verify this through lots of case studies. But the anticipatory is realizing that there's something more beyond where we are right now. Let's anticipate what will be. If you get people to imagine what something is going to be like in the future, then they will commit and take action right now to make that happen. And, I don't think we spend enough time doing that in education, or at least that has not been my experience. We like to take data that was collected from the past, analyze that data, and say, okay, well, what are we going to do? How are we going to fix it? As opposed to say, let's just take for a moment, where would we like to be by the end of next year? How do we see right now the first day of school when the students are coming into the building? We always have in-service the first couple of days. And a lot of times we're thinking back about the year before and certain deficits. But if we just say, let's really imagine we've got 3 days before these students come here. What type of experience do we want to create for them? How do you see them flourishing at the end of the marking period? Or those first rounds of parent-teacher conferences, what do you imagine celebrating with the families? And once you really start to imagine that, it's like a flower opening up. And you'll have clarity on what you need to do in order to make that moment happen. So again, focusing on the positive, asking a question, choosing where you want to go and framing that question around that. That's what we're going to be working on over the next couple of weeks. All right, so take a moment right now. Which one of the 5 principles resonates with you most? I would like you to write that down in your note catcher. Or if you prefer to use, a journal, a piece of paper. So be thinking about it. Which one of those 5? Look back in your notes. What ways has this newfound knowledge shifted something in you? So focus on the what, focus on the how. And then now that you have this awareness, I really like this principle. It's awakened this one thing in me. Ooh. What are you going to change? What are you going to maybe stop doing? What are you going to start to do or change? And just sit with that and write about that for a couple of minutes. Pause the video. Alrighty. Second half. So if you learn nothing else from this course, to just remember to use strength or strengths with an S, strength-based questions. And that really is curiosity. And that is curious leadership. Good leaders don't have the right answers. They ask the right questions and give people the time and the space to come up with them together and support each other. And how you ask that question will totally predict the outcome. Next. All right. I don't know if people have heard of this yet. I don't know if it starts to become a cliche. I know within the AI world, everyone knows about this. And I think it's probably with trauma-informed and culturally responsive teaching practices. You probably have heard of this, but I'm just going to say it again for people who haven't, or at least there's a new context now. Red pens, right? We have, at least within English, we were told to abandon the red pen because it's, I even remember red pens and red pencils marking up my paper when I was a kid back in the 80s. And, you get back your paper and all these things are circled and crossed out. And man, does that really want to inspire you to revise that paper? When you see you really worked hard on this paper and then you just see all the mistakes that they pointed out and you're like, okay, well, I guess I'm a bad writer. That does not inspire people to bring their best self. So instead of doing that, and then so people were like, okay, well, then I won't use a red pen. I'll use a green pen. Well, now the green is the new red and the purple is the new green. So it's not about that. It's about circling the things that you like. Pick your favorite color highlighter. Maybe it is a red pen because maybe that's what you like, but you pick something that brings you joy. I like to use purple. It's my favorite color, purple highlighter, or I love sparkly gel pens as long as you can see it well, but whatever brings you joy. And when you are reading that child's work, you highlight what you love and then you say what you love about it. Now, this is from an English perspective. I understand that. So, for example, even if that entire paper was not the best, let's say that child tends to be very sarcastic in class and maybe even a little bit negative, and they put that in their paper. You could highlight it and say, I love your honesty. I love how I can actually hear your voice the way you wrote that sentence right there. Maybe it's one sentence on the entire paper. And then you could say, I wonder what it would look like if you used more adjectives like this in your paper. And maybe the next paper will have 5 sentences. Maybe they're negative, but are they expressing themselves better? Yes. Are they motivated to write more? Yes. Are you validating who they are as a human being? Yes. And are you building these relationships? Yes. And you're asking them a question. I wonder how many more adjectives you could use next time. I'm wondering, could you next time use antonyms for every negative thing you say? What if you did the opposite paper and write the opposite of what you think? Do you think you could try that next time? I wonder what would happen. Could you do it? Right? So what does that look like outside of an English class is, well, and we know this, if the child is rambunctious and you say, well, they certainly have a lot of enthusiasm, or, I really like their imagination because they tend to daydream. Those are euphemisms. What you do is you try to give specific feedback in real time and also put it in the form of a question. So, for example, they usually come in late. And then you ask, and we're going to get to this in one of the frameworks. Student usually comes in late, always 20 minutes late. One time they don't. Instead of saying, oh, I see you finally made it on time, that's backhanded. That's not a compliment, really. And it's also a statement. What you could say, and maybe not in front of the other students, hey, I couldn't help but notice you came on time today. I'm really curious. What was different this morning that you were able to make it on time? I'm really wondering, did you mind sharing what worked? Right? And also the word why. I personally love the question why, because that wakes up all these neurons in my brain like, oh, well, there's something going on. I wonder why. But if you ask someone else why to them, it puts them on the defensive. And it took me a long time to train myself to not ask why anymore. Why did you do that? I don't know why. And maybe sometimes they don't know why because they're young and neuroscience, they can't metacognate and unpack why they hit the person right next to them. It was a reactive thing and they can't say why. But even if someone says, I love your earrings, where did you get them? But if you said, why did you wear those earrings today? It's human nature to say, we scan for threats. I don't know. Shouldn't have I worn them? I don't know, because I was in the mood to wear gold today. Right. So abort the why. All right, here we go. Different frameworks. I think I got 4 different frameworks. This is the P.A.I.R framework. And what I think I'm going to do is all these slides with these principles and frameworks, I should probably put them all in one folder that I'll do for you so you have them. P.A.I.R framework. This is where it stands for purpose, appreciate, imagine, and reflect. And you'll also see that there's another P for pause. And if you notice, we already did the first 2. The purpose for taking this course, the purpose for why you want to become a leader, because now you get immediate buying into it, the purpose of why we're studying Mesopotamia, and you ask them to discover their purpose. Then you appreciate something from the past. Because if you can find something in the past that was working, that was positive, now you are helping them to identify their own strengths. Then once they realize that they have some strengths, you say, now imagine using them in the future. And what might that look like if we really lean into that? Then finally, you reflect and take action in the present. So you leverage your strengths from the past to imagine that positive outcome of the future. It's great for meetings, for workshops, for starting a unit, for starting a class. I use this all the time. It is basically a lesson plan. It's just different. So think about that. That's the first one, the P.A.I.R framework. The woman who created this is Mo McKenna. She lives up in Toronto. She's another friend-tour of mine. And so, I don't try to throw out names. I'm not a name dropper to be fancy. I'm telling you this stuff because I am so fortunate to know these people personally. And so I have deep, intimate knowledge of this stuff. And it's kind of hard to unpack all in one 6-week course, but if you want to know more about this and you have a question and I can't answer it, I can reach out to her and get that answer for you. So that one is the P.A.I.R framework. Now she even though AI, that can even change over time. The Poetic Principle means things are changeable. If you Google or research the P.A.I.R framework, sometimes the P is for pause, sometimes it's for purpose, sometimes she didn't even have the P, she was evolving it. But in between these stages, you do pause and you have to connect and you have to reflect. And there's this, mindfulness to it where it's not like, come on, let's go. We got to do this stuff. It's, that's very interesting. I wonder what that's about. And you become curious. And I love when she says, wow, that's really interesting. Can you tell me more about that? And it immediately allows the person the freedom to expound upon it. They're not being shut down. Sometimes if they say something that's not quite on point or off brand, or maybe even a microaggression, and if you say, wow, that's interesting you say that. I'm interested to know, what do you mean by that? Can you tell me more? And then they have to go, and then they have to start coming up with examples. And sometimes you can't defend what you said because it's just a thought, it's just an emotion, and it's not based in fact. And it gives people the grace to say, you know what? Never mind. I didn't really mean that. I apologize. Can we do over? Can we start over? Thank you. Thank you for giving me the space to think and reframe that. So that is the model P.A.I.R. Second one, name it, flip it, frame it. Oh, let me say that again. Name it, flip it, frame it. And that comes from the book Conversations Worth Having. And that's Jackie Stavros and Sherry Torres. Again, more people that I met when I got my training. And it's really, really simple to do is, appreciative inquiry, again, isn't rose-colored glasses. It's not saying, oh, no problems here, everything's great. No, you take the problem, you acknowledge it. You acknowledge the negative impact. All right, here's what's going on. The student keeps on coming late. Flip it to the positive opposite. If the student is always coming late, the positive opposite is that they're always coming on time. Well, why do you want them to come on time? Are you just super type A and school starts at 7:10, they need to be here at 7:10? Or is it the fact that when they come late, you have to start over? They're disrupting the class. It gets you off your game. They're missing instruction. They can't fully participate. So what you do is you focus it on what they are able to do then. So if they came in on time, they would be able to feel prepared, ready to go, fully participate, staying calm. That's what you want to focus on. And you ask a question on how might we get to that together. Now you can have a true conversation. So I kind of rushed ahead, but here we go. Here's this little chart that they have. So down at the lower left, destructive, depreciative statement. So when something depreciates, it's a negative energy, a negative vibration, and it's a statement. Hey, I noticed you're coming in late all the time. You're disrupting the class. That's not a conversation. That is being critical. That is shaming them. That is giving them no room to contribute to the conversation. Now, you could ask a question about it and say, why do you keep on coming in late? Well, now you've asked a question and maybe they can respond. I don't know. My mom oversleeps. She's working late. She oversleeps. And now you're just still wallowing in this negative. So now you could ask, let's do a statement that's affirmative. I noticed you're on time for once. Take out the for once. I noticed you're on time. Again, not inviting any type of conversation or exchange. So, conversations worth having. When you come to class and you're able to participate, you really add a lot of value. And I really appreciate how you contribute. And I'm wondering, what is it that we could do together so that you might be able to be here on time? Or you could say on the one time that they were on time, I already said that, what happened this morning that you were able to make it on time? Or an appreciative statement or an appreciative inquiry question about the student getting there on time is, I'm wondering what we could do together to support you so that you could make it here on time. Or if you know that's just never going to happen for whatever reason, what could we do together so that when you do come in, you could come in a way that we can really get you caught up quicker or something like that, right? So it's building relationships, and you can have them participate because, again, what people create, they buy into. So if they are part of creating a solution, then you will have a better chance of having that positive outcome that you want. So again, it's all about asking the questions, changing how people are acting and thinking if you ask the questions and are really, really curious. So here are some examples. Just take a moment to look at this. You may even want to pause the video so you can take a look at them. Working well. What things have gone well. Contributing factors, or who or what is going on in a positive way. Now, there's one that's kind of negative. What stops things working better for you? So how might we even take that? What could we change so things work better for you? And I like this other one. What would be happening if things were working better for you? What might that look like? What would the outcome? Now, these are very open-ended. Better. Well, what's better? On time, more engaged, connecting with your peers, handing in your work. And these are great questions to have for IEP meetings, when you consult with students as a counselor or advisor. Open-ended strengths. All right, we're almost done here. Model 3 is S.O.A.R. I don't know if you've ever heard of SWOT analysis. They use that in the business world. I think one person in our group teaches business courses. Is that right? Am I making that up? So a SWOT analysis is your strengths and your weaknesses, your opportunities and your threats. Well, my goodness, do we really want to examine weaknesses? Do we really want to examine threats? That's not really making me, especially when you do a business model, I don't want to examine my threats and my weaknesses in order to build a business. That's not going to motivate me. Same thing for students, to analyze their weaknesses and analyze the threats or their impediments to success. So here, strengths, opportunities, aspirations, and results. So what are they doing well? What are their areas where they can grow? What can we do? And that's the aspiration is very curious as well. Like, what do we want to achieve? And then what can we do right now to set some goals, SMART goals and things like that. It's similar to the pause, but it's a little bit more, or similar to the P.A.I.R framework, but it's a little bit more action oriented. It's a little bit more strategic. It's a little bit more analytical to the other one. This is a little bit more brain based. The other one's a little bit more heart based. So when might you use it? Again, it's more like data driven, analytical, new initiatives, maybe PLCs, SLOs, essential learning targets, all those great alphabet soups. Anytime where you've got to come up with a plan, whereas the P.A.I.R framework is more like high level, 30,000 foot overview. This is more, in the weeds and detail oriented. Again, here's a whole list of strength-based questions. The wording is a little bit more for corporate because I remember I told you that a lot of this was for business. By the way, Harvard Business Review, HBR, I love that website. I love that organization. They have a lot of great articles, and they have this sweet spot of being very intellectual and cerebral because, hello, it's Harvard. But it's also mainstream and kind of buzzworthy. The way they write things, it's accessible. It's not entrenched in this like academia stuff. So HBR has a lot of AI stuff. But if you look here, these are all the questions for strengths, the opportunities, aspirations, and results. It's color-coded. Asking some of these questions at faculty meetings, at department meetings, at team time. If you start throwing these out, watch things come alive. What's our most compelling aspiration? Like, what do we want most this year? Right? When was the last time that question was asked? Now, I'll give you an example of me doing this a couple years ago. We had a in-service where there were English teachers paired with science teachers. And we were doing this new, and there's somebody from my school, so you'll recognize this. the create, perform, respond, which is moving away from multiple choice, Scantron, especially in science and social studies. You know, you do the bubble dots and the students are pretty much graded on how well they can pick A, B, C, or D. And, you know, what we don't want is a student by the end of the year getting really good at multiple choices. And the remedy for that from our school district was create, perform, or respond. Now, we do that in English all the time. Let's write a poem and let's perform the poem. Let's do some type of interpretive analysis and things like that. But, you know, I said, how do you do that in science? So when we were coming together and I said, you know, I'm wondering, science teachers, what might it look like in your classroom where you've got that performative piece in science? Oh my gosh, you should have seen how they came alive. Oh, we do performance all the time. Yeah, we were doing genetics and eugenics, and you know, we did a court case or like a mock trial on the morality behind genetic testing and all this stuff. And oh, we do this and did it. Oh my goodness, what conversation we had when I just asked a specific question. It was amazing. Think of ways maybe you could use some of these. All right, question time again, an appreciation question. Which framework do you see integrating into your professional practice? Maybe it's frameworks. How do you see that? And really take some time to go through and how that's a big thing. How might we? I should probably make one more slide. Let me put that on my list here. HMW, how might we? Slide. But to think about that, pick a framework if you want to take them all and start to brainstorm ideas of how you might use that when you come back to school in 5 weeks? And then a question is, what do you still need from me in order to support you in this? I need feedback. I don't know if I'm just talking too much. I don't know if I'm giving you enough to chew on. I don't know if you need more direction. I know that you all have been coming up with great resources, videos, podcasts, and you know, putting that into discussions are great because now we can see all this stuff together. It's fantastic. You're making my job easy. That being said, what else do you need from me? I am going to be creating a project, and I don't know if you have access to the future projects. Next week, you'll be creating a case study using, now that you have this good lens, let's appreciate the past, and can you create this case study? And then I'm going to be giving you more content, and eventually you're going to create like a little action plan for yourself, picking some of these things. So right now I'm just asking you a little journal question, but then we're going to get a little deeper into things and be a little bit more strategic with it. For now, this is where we are. What do you still need from me in order to integrate some of these? All right, so you'll pause the video. Well, actually, you'll be turning it off because this is the end for today. And then we will have one more installment within this slide deck. And then we'll get on to the next part of the course. Thanks a lot. Looking forward to your responses. And I'll probably put a discussion post on this one too. Bye.